At 99 years old, he still dances, not as a memory, not in archival footage, but in the living world. While many who shaped him have passed and the genre he perfected has shifted in public attention, he remains present, moving with vitality and warmth. Behind the charm that once lit up millions of living rooms lies a life of quiet struggle, loss, and resilience. A man who performed joy while quietly enduring pain. His story is a testament to endurance, creativity, and the persistence of the human spirit in a world that often overlooks the very people who make it brighter. Childhood in Missouri, a waiting room of life. Dick Van Dyke was born on December 13, 1925 in West Plains, Missouri, a small, sleepy town offering little to ignite imagination. To most, life moved slowly and predictably, with horizons that rarely changed. Yet even as a boy, Dick sensed that the world he lived in was merely a waiting room, a place he would one day leave behind. His father, Joe, a traveling salesman, was often absent. His mother, Hazel, held the household together quietly. Warmth was sparse, emotional connection rare. But this quiet void would plant in him a lifelong yearning to be truly seen, and he would find that stage was the only place where that happened. Discovery of performance, laughter as salvation. From an early age, Dick learned that laughter could bridge the gaps that affection could not. A well-timed face, a perfectly mimicked voice, or a stumble performed just right could transform the atmosphere of a room. He did not perform for applause, but to be noticed, to exist in a way that felt real. He idolized Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy, studying their films with obsessive care. Comedy, he realized, was architecture. Precisely constructed, carefully timed. Even at 11, he approached humour like a craftsman, already understanding its power. In a world that ignored him, performance became his lifeline, his way of claiming existence. The war years, entertainment in the midst of conflict. In 1944, Dick Van Dyke was drafted into the United States Army Air Forces. He had hoped to become a pilot, but his underweight frame grounded him. Instead, he became a radio operator and later entertained troops through the American Forces network. Though far from the heroics of the front lines, these years were formative. Dick discovered that performance amid fear and uncertainty was vital, not frivolous. Laughter became a necessity, a lifeline for both performer and audience. The war taught him the importance of presence and timing, lessons no stage school could replicate. His service was modest, but its impact on his craft and perspective would resonate for decades. Early struggles. Chasing a dream, after the war, Dick returned in 1946 with no money, no connections, and no formal training, only an unwavering belief in his destiny to perform. The entertainment world, however, was unyielding. Early attempts at radio announcing in Atlanta failed. He formed the Merry Mutes with Phil Erickson, performing small gigs that offered more rejection than recognition. He moved from city to city, New Orleans, Los Angeles, back again, seeking opportunity that seemed just out of reach. Nights were long and filled with doubt. Yet even in uncertainty, his determination never wavered. Each rejection was a test, each performance a rehearsal for the success that, eventually, would find him. Marriage and early adulthood, private struggles. In 1948, Dick married, quietly navigating adulthood while juggling a career that barely sustained him. Life was full of small victories and larger frustrations. The private pressures of his career, combined with a home life that offered little emotional affirmation, made him feel isolated. Love, laughter, and ambition often collided in ways that left him both fulfilled and exhausted. Though he faced private shame and setbacks, he persisted, motivated by the conviction that the stage was his refuge. The dichotomy of a life lived publicly in joy and privately in struggle became his pattern. a balance of performance and survival that would define the decades to come. Building a career. The long road to recognition. The 1950s and early 1960s were years of painstaking effort. Dick honed his craft in small theatres, nightclubs and television sets that offered modest pay and uncertain recognition. Each performance demanded precision, each joke required timing, honed through countless repetitions. Critics were often indifferent, audiences sometimes unresponsive, yet he continued. Over time, perseverance met opportunity. Roles came slowly, then more frequently, as his unique blend of physical comedy and affable charm gained attention. It was not instant fame. It was the result of a life dedicated to craft. Through it all, he never lost sight of the principle that had guided him since childhood. Performance is a way of being seen. Addiction and personal loss, the hidden struggles, behind the humour and public success, Dick faced battles that were invisible to the world. Addiction crept in, consuming energy, time and relationships. A marriage of 36 years ultimately could not survive the strain. Yet even in the depths of personal turmoil, he continued to work. The paradox of performing joy while privately struggling became a defining feature of his life. He often described those years not with bitterness, but with the honesty that characterized his later reflections. Every stumble, every relapse, every loss became a lesson in resilience. Each setback, another layer in the architecture of the man the world would eventually come to celebrate. Rebuilding later in life, finding what was missing. Remarkably, at 86 years old, Dick discovered what had been absent from his life, a deep sense of personal fulfillment and connection. After decades of rebuilding his career and his life multiple times, he finally found a completeness that eluded him in youth. He had survived war, rejection, addiction, and loss, and yet he had never surrendered. This late-life renewal was not an abrupt triumph, but a quiet, steady accumulation of effort, reflection, and persistence. It was a testament to the human capacity to adapt and to heal, proving that joy is not a reward, but a practice cultivated over a lifetime. Philosophy of joy, performance as practice. Dick Van Dyke's life demonstrates that joy is not earned by circumstance. It is created through practice. He continued performing even when reviews were indifferent and audiences were unprepared. To him, the act of making a room warmer, of bringing laughter and light, was a daily commitment. It was imperfect, exhausting, sometimes lonely work, yet profoundly meaningful. His life teaches that happiness and impact are not passive rewards, but active choices. The discipline of performance, of showing up even when it is hard, is a lesson in resilience, generosity and presence, offered in a way only a lifetime of laughter can convey. Legacy, still moving at 99. Now, at 99, with the Pacific stretching beyond his window, Dick Van Dyke embodies the culmination of a life fully lived. His story is one of persistence, artistry, and the unshakable belief in one's purpose. He has survived and rebuilt more times than most could imagine, yet he continues to bring joy to the world. His life is a living testament. The act of showing up, of performing with heart, is itself a form of triumph. The lessons of resilience, craft and hope are encoded not in speeches or books, but in every movement, every smile and every laugh he shares with those around him. Conclusion. The art of living fully. Dick Van Dyke's life reminds us that joy, art and resilience are intertwined. A childhood of quiet longing, years of struggle, and decades of performance have shaped a man whose presence continues to warm the world. His story illustrates the paradox of public happiness built upon private struggle and the possibility of rebuilding at any age. To live fully is not to avoid hardship, but to persist despite it. At 99, still dancing, still present, he offers the clearest message. Life is meant to be lived, performed, and shared. Every imperfect, beautiful moment of it.